So, from an enabler's perspective, some lessons on running a business, what would you like to share?
Three things come to my mind. The first one is on being customer obsessed. The second thing, think big and start small. The third element, the ability to constantly learn and adapt, reinvent. We announced Amazon Nova foundational models. So these are enabling all the startups to leverage all those LLMs which have frontier intelligence. The data engineering team as well as the ML team and the Gen AI team, they can all come together and share their work, and at the same time they can experiment faster. As we see as part of the trends this year, we are seeing more and more startups not just focusing on the basic digitization, but actually solving for much more complex thing. For example, on embedded finance, on personalized wealth management, insurtech, so on and so forth. They're trying to solve the problem around beauty recommendations. It is highly personalized beauty recommendations.
Namaskar and welcome to Crafting Bharat. I'm your host, Goutam Srinivasan. Well, throughout this series, we have brought to you stories of startups that are breaking the mold when it comes to solving the problems of today and tomorrow with the power of technology. Our talks with founders spanning a wide range of sectors from logistics and healthcare to real estate and transportation reveal the complexities of managing scale, handling integrations, leveraging AI, and modernizing applications. Today, we get the enabler's perspective on cracking the code of success for these issues and understand the trends that will define the startup landscape as India marches towards progress. Please welcome Goutam Kurumella, Head of Startup Solutions Architecture at AWS India. Well, this is a case of Goutam calling Goutam. So, first of all, thank you so much for joining us here on Crafting Bharat, Goutam.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, we've got lots to talk about, and in a sense, take stock of where we are so far and where we are headed next. So, let's start with a look at your flagship event, reInvent 2024. And I want to start by looking at some of the announcements that were made at this flagship event. It's the premier cloud computing event, which happens in December. The world's best when it comes to cloud computing, the community gathers around. Now, the reason I cite that is I want to understand the context of the announcement and its relevance in terms of solving complexities of scale for Indian startups from an analytics, integration, business applications, and Gen AI perspective. For instance, I guess the next generation of SageMaker, the announcement that I read, which unifies the engineering, analytics, and generative AI in a streamlined studio solution with enhanced capabilities. Now, the question we have is, how does it unlock opportunities for Indian startups? Because a lot of these themes have come about in the conversations that we have had.
Again, it's a very thoughtful question, and reInvent 2024 had a lot of interesting announcements, and many of those are very relevant for the startups in India. If I had to sort of pick few examples, and let's look at from slightly different or multiple lenses. The first one, like you said, SageMaker. So I would sort of see this or put this in a simplification bucket, right? So how we can simplify the existing processes. For example, if you go to any startup today in India, you'll have multiple teams working on solving different point problems. For example, there's a data engineering team, there is a ML team, there is a AI team. So all working on their own, set of problem statements. But again, the data which is feeding in and which is required is pretty much common across everyone. But they have their own set of tools, and they have built their silos over a period of time. What we are actually enabling them is, we are giving them a simplified or a unified interface so that all the teams can actually go and leverage the same platform.
So a single set of tools that leverage the single source of truth. Which is
Absolutely,
data.
right? And the data engineering team, as well as the ML team and the Gen AI team, they can all come together and share their work, and at the same time they can experiment faster. at a lower cost, because it's a common environment. You don't have to have multiple environments and all of that. So
Hmm.
I think that's greatly simplifies how startups operate.
Absolutely. And they're
From
always looking to shorten their GTM time, right? They have to
Absolutely,
be at the forefront of serving their customer needs.
yep,
But it is that the timelines are getting shorter and shorter. Some of the startups have mentioned that, and especially in the B2B space,
yep,
we had featured Freight Tiger. They mentioned the same thing. As they expanded,
that's correct.
they realized that the go to market for delivery of apps and services has reduced substantially.
And if you have to use again different lens of innovation, for example, from an innovation perspective, Reinvent, we announced Amazon Nova foundational models. So these are enabling all the startups to leverage all those LLMs which have frontier intelligence and at a industry price performance standpoint. And what we are actually hearing from the customers is they are able to now solve extremely complex use cases, and the latency that Nova models are actually giving is pretty fantastic. And the cost is something which most of the startup customers are happy with, right? So I think those are some of the interesting things that are happening from an innovation standpoint. But more importantly, from India lens, again, if you look at this is a country of developers, right? And if you have to look at developer productivity, there were a lot of enhancements that were announced for Amazon Q Developer.
Hmm.
Amazon Q Developer today has all those agents that can actually help you not just code, but actually help you debug,
Hmm.
run the security scan, do the code reviews, generate the complete documentation, right? So that's pretty
So,
awesome in
in
a
a sense,
sense.
the barrier to access has been lowered significantly because we're also moving towards an environment where the talent needs to do a lot more. This, in a sense, leaves the bandwidth free. Moving ahead, though, a lot of talk in this series has also been centered around generative AI and the possibilities that it has to offer. So, for startups with game changing ambitions when it comes to Gen AI, how does the AWS Accelerator program enable them to be up and running within weeks? Because when I look at the program, I think among 80 companies picked by AWS for the global AI program, there are 7 Indian startups. That's the highest number we are seeing, I think, from the APAC region. So, what role will this program, in your opinion, play in unlocking opportunities for Gen AI? Because we are moving from 2023, which, as you said, was the year of POCs in one of your talks earlier, to 2024, which is the year of production, to 2025, which is the year of business value.
Absolutely. So just talking about the generative AI accelerator, or we call it as global Gen AI accelerator. That is, there are multiple benefits. One is the startups who are part of the cohort, they get access to generous credits that will actually help them get started on multiple experiments. For example, if they are building a product and if they need a complex infrastructure, a compute environment with all those GPU enabled infrastructure or specific AI accelerators. So we have a team of specialists who will actually help them set up those infrastructure and
So, a
help
managed
them.
services framework.
Absolutely, and help them get started early so they can complete their experimentation and they can validate their hypotheses and all of them much faster. Number two is actually in terms of getting access to the partners. For example, partners such as NVIDIA. We also closely work with Meta, Mistral. So experts from not just AWS but also some of our ecosystem partners. They all come together and share their expertise with the cohort members. Number two is actually in terms of getting access to the partners. For example, partners such as NVIDIA. We also closely work with Meta, Mistral. So experts from not just AWS but also some of our ecosystem partners. They all come together and share their expertise with the cohort members. The uh, problem around beauty recommendations. It is
Oh,
highly
okay.
personalized beauty recommendations. We have companies such as Ford.ai who has actually enabled or powering more than million merchants and marketeers to create stunning visuals.
Hmm.
So we have a startup, for example, like Unscript AI, who can actually produce a high quality video with almost like a no studio setup, right? So these are some of
We
the
need to raise our game as well as these solutions come about.
exactly, right. So I think these are some of the things that Indian startups are building, local innovations, but they are solving for global problems. And we have again the testament. Uh, is, Indian startups are now, what it proves is actually there are multiple opportunities here in India.
Hmm.
So if you really look at the kind of talent that we have and the innovation that is happening in India, that's pretty much a reflective of the cohort size and the number of startups that have actually gone from.
And in a sense, India is the perfect innovation incubator, because if it works here with the diversity of customer cohorts, with the sheer scale that you have to handle, if things work out, you can succeed anywhere.
Anywhere in the world.
In that
Yes.
context, it brings into focus the fintech innovations landscape, because so much has happened over the past
Yeah.
few years. I believe AWS has also started the fintech accelerator program called Infinity 2.0. So, in that context, how do you see the innovation landscape in the fintech sector panning out? Because a lot of things have changed over the
Yeah.
past 4 5 years. Where do we go from here?
Yeah. So again, Infinity 2.0 actually has uh, huge success in terms of uh, onboarding high quality startups who
Hmm.
actually done some impactful work. I mean, could think of Brisk Pay, companies such as India Gold, Viana. So some of these startups were part of the previous cohort, and as we see as part of the trends this year, we are seeing more and more startups not just focusing on the basic digitization, but actually solving for much more complex thing. For example, on embedded finance, on personalized wealth management, insurtech, so on and so forth. And if you really look at the cohort again, there is also a lot of focus in terms of priority sector lending as well, or
Hmm.
alternative lending. We have seen companies such as Crego, who is actually building a credit operating system and enabling all those MSMEs, with the right credit support which they
Hmm.
need. And that's not a simple thing. In a sense, they have to bring together a ecosystem of NBFC players, large financial institutions, as well as entrepreneurs onto the same platform and make those
Absolutely.
things
This
happen.
space never fails to surprise me. We had Credgenics on board as a guest, and the amazing things they are doing by leveraging technology to transform the debt collection space in the context of expanding the credit ecosystem. That itself is serves as an inspiration for all of us. All right. Let's look at some Sansani khabar. While we talk about these things, there's also the headlines which have been hit. DeepSeek R1. Everyone was talking about it. It impacted the markets. Now it's available as a managed model on Amazon Bedrock. So I want to know from you, how this move will enable Indian startups to accelerate innovation, because there's a lot of bandwidth which is freed from a work standpoint. So take us through the dynamics of it. Any trends you are seeing on model evaluation and the choice on Bedrock from Indian startups that are interesting according to you? That's a follow up. First, your comments on DeepSeek R1 on Amazon Bedrock, and then the trends.
Right. See, DeepSeek R1 again is fully available as a managed service.
Hmm.
So, which means that you just consume that as an API. So, there is no need to set up a complex infrastructure. You don't have to plan for what resources that would require, and worry about throughput, security, and so on and so forth. All those problems have been solved by Bedrock, or Amazon Bedrock, as we call. And what is enabling the startups is actually access to a state of the art model like DeepSeek today. And one of the philosophies that we strongly believe in is the choice of models, right? So it's not like DeepSeek is a one stop for all the problems that they're trying to solve, but you might probably require different models for different use cases.
Hmm.
And Bedrock actually enables that. And if you're building an end-to-end generative AI application, model is one part of the overall puzzle, right? So you need to think about knowledge base or the vector stores. You need to think about the security. We call it as guardrails, especially if you're thinking about building an application in a more responsible AI principles and all of that. I think that's a much important aspect. And from a startup standpoint, the ability to experiment faster is also important. So how we can provide them tools
Hmm.
through which they can actually go and test the entire application, build out the entire application, without having to do any single line of, without writing any single line of code. So there are no code features that are available within
Hmm.
Bedrock, where you can actually just drag and drop certain things, complete the entire prompt flow and test your application.
And that's where a lot of the market is moving right now, because
This,
it is
yeah,
empowering the workforce to come up with solutions which they are at the front line of, rather than have a remote team trying to gauge what is the issue that they are trying
yeah,
to solve and then provide a solution. All right, I want to shift focus now on some of the themes which came up during our discussions on Crafting Bharat. One was on the fact that the environment for startups itself has changed from chasing pure growth to solving for profitability. Everyone from Incred to Connect and Heal spoke about the slow and steady wins the race approach, the patience capital approach. So what I want to know is, in terms of AWS enabling Indian startups to raise their efficiency and profitability quotient, what's going on? Because we are in the era of agentic workflows coming in, where you have independent decision making opening up bandwidth, plus providing a more robust experience. So take us through the profitability and efficiency quotient being raised for startups by AWS.
yeah. I think there are multiple things that one need to do, and like you said, adopting some of the technologies and frameworks that are out there, or the concepts such as agentic AI, is very powerful today. If you look at some of the examples, we have a startup who's worked with us called Oriserve, where they actually used Amazon Bedrock platform to build enterprise-grade generative AI bots as well as agents. So that has actually enabled them to solve for their end customers, but at the same time, they were able to grow their business by more than 50%. Right, so they were able to do a lot more what they were able to do in the past because of some of these technologies which they've been able to leverage, right? But again, looking at the other angles again, so how we can simplify certain things, right? How we can do lot more with the same sort of resources that you have. Your DevOps team is not going to increase, right? If you're for most of the startups, it will probably remain the same size. So how we can actually provide them with better tools, better services that can actually help them do their job much more efficiently. In that regard, probably one example I could think of is a service like EKS. Kubernetes, most of the startups use Kubernetes infrastructure in one way or the other, right? So we announced something called as EKS Auto during reInvent last year, and EKS Auto enables every startup today to sort of run their application workloads, and they will keep them focused on building their business applications and free up their time in terms of resource management, cluster upgrade, auto scaling, version upgrade, so on and so forth. And that also helps them build things which are much more secure, because that generally comes with set of certifications from AWS side. That frees them time in terms of managing and making the infrastructure compliant for their end customers. If they're building for a bank or a large telco, you need to make sure that they
There is a
comply to
compliance aspect to it, or
compliance
if it's a
angle as well.
healthcare firm.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, the possibilities are many, and seeding those possibilities is a program called Activate by AWS. In fact, many of the startups that were featured on Crafting Bharat have begun their journeys via the AWS Activate program. So let's talk about that a bit more. Since 2013, AWS Activate has helped many startups realize their groundbreaking ideas. And the question I have is, what role will it now play as the flagship program in powering the Soonicorns and unicorns of tomorrow? Because you've come so far, you've built a legacy of excellence with a whole cohort of startups. But the question always is, what's next? What would you say to that?
Right. So AWS Activate has been probably the starting point for many of the startups that we have seen, and that continues to be so, right? And some of the things, first is access to infrastructure, which is like access through AWS credit program that actually helps them build their minimal viable product, and then iterate some of the things based on the customer feedback which they're getting, and then scale, right? The entire process of experimentation is something that's where Activate plays a key role. On other things, in terms of how we can make startups much more efficient and how we can help them build faster, so we also added few things such as within the Activate there is something called as Activate Console, and within Activate Console we added all those templates, like 40 plus templates, which they can actually go pick and deploy it in single click. right? Things such as, for example, a blockchain infrastructure. If someone is working on crypto or Web3, whatever is required for the bare minimum setup, you can actually go and have that deployed with just one click. Likewise, there are templates for analytics. There are templates for deploying microservices. Mobile application patterns, so on and so forth. I think we can, yeah. So I think it's like a bouquet of templates or patterns which can actually help them, deploy, in matter of minutes, and then start their experimentation or start building products and solutions around that.
Absolutely. Well, there are many routes to success in the world of business. It just depends on which route you decide to take. Before we wrap things up, Gautam, we've asked this question to many of the founders here on Crafting Bharat. So we want to get the enablers perspective on the lessons that you would share on running a business. We've got many of our viewers who could be the next big thing in Indian business. So from an enabler's perspective, some lessons on running a business, what would you like to share?
I think three things come to my mind. The first one is on being customer obsessed. Three things come to my mind. The first one is on being customer obsessed. Being obsessed with your customer. I think that will actually work out. I think always when you build a product, validate that, right? So validate and then iterate, and then you can scale what is actually working, right? So if you just chase the market trends, probably I think that probably will be a distraction. So stay true to what the customer requires, and then build for your customers, and make sure that you're probably building better than anybody else, right? I think that's number one. The second thing, while what I gathered talking to other founders and people that we generally work with, again, is they think big, but at the same time, they break the problem into smaller pieces that they can actually go and implement. So think big and start small. So it's important to break the uh, you know everyone has very ambitious plans when they start the startups, right? But it's extremely important, the successful founders have managed to break that into something which is workable, and they chose those building blocks, and they make those I would say they have incremental success over a period of time, and then eventually reach to that stage of you know achieving bigger things. The third element would be in terms of, again, being or having the ability to constantly learn and adapt, right? I think that's something which is extremely important. If you look at the scenario in India, the dynamics are so different. Things are changing every other day, right? So you need to make sure that you're learning new things, you're adapting to changes that is happening in the environment. It could be a change in regulation, it could be a change in the customer demands, or it could be change, in some sort of technology itself, for example, technology trends. So how you can quickly adopt some of those things, and make sure that you're experimenting and you're solving for your customers. I think that will probably help many of the startups navigate those challenging times.
Fantastic indeed. Never break the customer focus. And the most important, always keep learning. And with those words from the Bice, we conclude this enabling and learning conversation around the Indian startup ecosystem and the supporting role that AWS has played in their rise. Gautam, great to have you on board Crafting Bharat. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
And thank you to our viewers for being part of this journey. We have reached yet another milestone covering the best and brightest in business. While this mission might have ended for now, there are still many more objectives to achieve for the India growth story. We hope to raise that flag of glory when we celebrate our centenary of freedom and look towards you, our ignited minds, to build our developed future. Thank you and Jai Hind.